Thank you. Yep, I'm from the Beaverton School District. I've been using JAMP for well over 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Matt Anderson. I'm in the engineering department at JAMP, and kind of just here for backup for Steven. He's prepared most of this presentation, has used the software. We have a couple different ways that we do this at JAMP, and we have some recommendations that I think are floating out there in some documents too. So just kind of here for backup and for the Q&A session to talk about possibly other options or how we use monitoring software too.
Excellent. All right, so I'll go ahead and get started. So some of the takeaways that I want to get here is really I want to cover why you even want to monitor your Jamf Pro servers on-prem, how monitoring helped our school district in a specific example where it actually really helped us out. I'm going to cover how to install the monitoring agents from specifically dataDOG, and how to customize, configure the dashboard that all the data gets presented on the dashboard, and finally how to share the dashboard. Let's see here. So I tried to come up with an analogy. Doctor made sense. So we're all kind of like server doctors, I guess, or the ones who work on the Jamf Pro servers. So like our human doctor counterparts, we have to diagnose a problem, and sometimes it's difficult. So being a server doctor, it's hard, but usually less life-threatening, which is good. A doctor would need to gather as much information as possible. They need to observe the patient, see what's going on, kind of get a baseline on what's normal, what's not normal. And then finally, they likely would need to interview the patient, maybe read some logs, figure out, exactly error codes. I mean, if humans could have error codes, that would be really cool, but not quite the case.
Hi, everybody. Now, tell Dr. Nick where it is to travel.
I'm at G. I got ants in my pants. I'm discombobulated. Give me a calmative.
Slow down, sir.
So that was the best I could come up with, is like a really good way to show how our servers can behave sometimes, like a senile person, I guess. So we don't get a lot of information, really, if you're just jumping into a server and trying to figure out why I can't log into the JSS anymore, or the Jamf Pro server. So we need a way to figure that out. So why should we do this? Again, we're going to get historical data. We're going to see performance over time with our issues, real-time metrics. And one of the things that Matt brought up when we were talking about this was actually providing some of this data to Jamf support, giving them another tool to help you figure out why your Jamf Pro servers are maybe not performing well. So that's when, at the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing my dashboard. And there's a way that you can actually share your dashboard with Jamf support. They can go through and look at all the metrics for your servers and maybe see why you're having those performance problems, or why things aren't working correctly. So in our particular case in the Beaverton School District, when I first started, we didn't have any kind of monitoring solution, which I think for a lot of on-prem customers, you get moved into a role, you maybe inherit someone else's server situation, and you kind of have to start kind of figuring out how everything's set up. It took me a while to kind of make the servers my own, figure out how they're all working. We started having some issues where we had inconsistent behavior with Apple push notifications. And so I did all the normal troubleshooting, and I still couldn't figure out the problem. So one of the things I did is I actually implemented a load balancer. The load balancer actually allowed me to start noticing, once we had the load balancer in place, it was reporting errors to dataDOG. They were getting 400 HTTP errors from clients. So clients were calling in, and the load balancer was reporting these 400 HTTP errors. Once I was able to gather that data, we came to find out that our Palo Alto firewall had a feature turned on called App ID, which is a really cool feature. It actually, instead of just opening up port 22 for a particular service like SSH, it actually will look at the traffic and make sure it's SSH traffic. We had App ID turned on for some APNS stuff we were trying to get in and out of the firewall, and that was causing the problem. So being able to have dataDOG to be able to monitor, to be able to find out the issue, and then actually help us lead it to a solution. So here it is. I was, at the time, before I stumbled across this tool, I was trying to find maybe like a open source solution. So I looked at Zabbix and Nagios and some of these other open source solutions, and I saw I had to spin up a server, and I could have done all this, but I was like, I want to find an easy solution, and I wanted to find something cloud hosted. What I liked about a cloud hosted solution is I could be anywhere in the world, pull out my iPhone, go to the dashboard, and view my stats. Yes, you could do that with a on-prem, but then you have to talk to your networking team, which if you're in K-12, that's not always an easy thing to do, especially if they want to open up holes for dashboard servers and things to call out to the internet. This tool worked really well to do all of that, and I kind of was able to set it up on my own and not have to get anyone else involved like most introverted server admins, so there we go. So again, dataDOG, it's a great tool, and they you put an agent on your server, and it monitors a whole bunch of services. So here are some, and then here are all the services that they monitor. It just keeps going. And so finally, these are the ones that we would likely use in our Jamf instances. We got Java, which runs tomCAT, MySQL, which is a database. Well, Java and tomCAT work together, sorry. Memcache is another thing we turn on. My load balancer is running HA proxy, but you can use any other tool for that as well. So they have a pretty good pricing structure set up. They have a free tier, which is what really attracted me to start using the tool. That gives you a day of metrics and up to 5 hosts. The dataDOG actually has APM monitoring, that's application performance monitoring. They support logs, alerts. They also have a free trial that for 2 weeks you can get all of their services. And the free tier is really just for the visualization stuff. So typical mid to large Jamf Pro instances, you're likely going to have a load balancer. Even if you don't have one, if you just have one VM or one physical server representing your JSS, this is still a great tool because it would be one server that has multiple services running on it and you can have set up on a dashboard. In our particular case, we have a VM for our MySQL, we have a VM for the load balancer, and different VMs for the master and child web apps. Really easy to set up. You could do this right now. You could do it later. You just go and create a free account at that website. Once you're logged in, basically on the left-hand side, there's an integrations button and then an agent button. On that page, you'll have an API key, and that you also have instructions on how to install the agent on your servers. I wanted to show you a really quick example on how easy it is to set up. So let me go ahead and get that going. So I apologize in advance. Normally when you're typing commands, you hit tab to autocomplete and maybe copy paste things, but I didn't. So I'm typing in my API key right there and setting it up as a variable because the command to install the agent will call the API key. So you can see the little cursor back there. I'm typing in the key there. We'll painfully, slowly watch this happen. There it is. Little typos, perfect. Oh, this is so painful. You guys want to check your email, you can. See what's up on Facebook. Yeah, figure that out too. Essentially, this is calling a script up on their GitHub, and it's grabbing the variable, and it's executing a script on their GitHub page that will completely do everything and get the agent installed. Obviously, if you were doing this, you would just copy and paste this from the website, and you'd be done in 3 seconds. And this is all real time, in case you were wondering. Nothing has been sped up. And so that's it. So the agent's installed now. If you did nothing else at this point, the agent's going to start reporting in CPU, memory, disk space, all these basic metrics are now going to start showing up as available items that you can put on your dashboard. So I show here that the agent's running and it's ready to be used. Not everyone has a Ubuntu or Linux-based VM, and so I wanted to show, again, on a Windows Server 2016 or whatever you have, you can run the MSI exec and actually install the MSI for the agent on the Windows Server. Here I copy and pasted it. You're welcome. This tool also allows you to custom tag like the host name of the server or any other kind of tags you want to add. 2016. Yep, and it'll just roll through a little wizard here. You can also put the silent switch on it as well. I don't run Windows Server, it's /something to silently install it. So I removed that switch so you guys can see here. But again, just like on the Ubuntu, that's it. It's installed, and the agent's on there. So hopefully you can see that there's not a lot of reason not to install something like this. I mean, right now it's free. You can create an account. You can see how easy it is to install the agent, and you can start monitoring your servers right away. And hopefully, there we go. When do I stop that video? Oh, there we go. All right, so finally, you set up the agent. Your servers are now reporting into dataDOG all that metric data. They have two different types of boards that you could set up, a time board or a screen board. Really, the basic difference between the two is a time board has kind of a rigid, fixed set of graphs with a fixed set of time metrics that you could set up. So you can go ahead and just set it to, I want to see the last hour of metrics or the last 24 hours, and then look at the metrics all matched up that way. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. I use the screen board because that lets me lay out my data however I want or what makes the most sense. If CPU performance is more important to me, I'm going to make that a bigger widget on my dashboard, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So here's a time board, and this gives you a little quick video. So I'm setting this back to the past hour. This particular time board is my SQL server. So you can see all the metrics I have here: slow queries, MySQL, the system load, traffic, system memory, and all this stuff is tracked. And in my particular case, I'm going back a week or a month, and I could just see trends over time, see what norms are, see anomalies. And really, as I scrub over the data, you notice how all the metrics are scrubbing at the same time. So it's telling you the same timestamp for every type of metric. Here's my screen board. By no means you have to make yours look as crazy as this one, but I set all my servers up in columns. And so I have RAM usage, CPU, swap space used. They have, instead of just having graphs, they actually let you use numbers to represent values. So load 1, load 5, load 15 for my Ubuntu servers. And again, you could scrub over the data and see exactly, exactly what's happening at that time. And all my time boards are switching and matching the same month metric that I just switched it to. So like I said before, the default agent, just by installing it, grabs some default data: CPU, memory, disk, I/O, network. Additionally, you can configure the servers to report in Java monitoring to see what tomCAT's doing. You can configure it so SQL works, and you can configure it for your load balancers. So again, I'm going to show you really quick how to set up like the JNUC stuff, for example. And this is my one of my web apps. And I'm going into the tomCAT directory, I'm going into the bin directory, and I'm looking for the setenvironment.sh. This is normally where you would set up like how much memory tomCAT uses. And really, I'm soft wrapping this. This is a Catalina startup, whatever you call it, startup information.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Parameters for the JVM.
Parameters
Yeah.
for tomCAT when it starts up that tells it to turn on JMX, which is remote monitoring for Java. I'm restarting tomCAT, and now tomCAT is now sending data to the agent who can now listen in on JMX and report those metrics. The other piece is the SQL server. You log into the MySQL console and you create a dataDOG user that you set a password with. You grant it a few basic permissions on the database, and then you also grant it process rights on the database. So it can't write to the database, it can't do anything other than just see what's going on with your MySQL database. This doesn't really matter whether you're on Windows or Ubuntu or whatever, those commands are all the same. After that, they have a comp file, and there's really great documentation on all this. These comp files are where you go in and adjust how you have your server set up. So they'll recommend a password for the dataDOG agent. You could just put in whatever you want there, and you're just specifying it here in this comp file. Yeah, complex password. So you save that, and then you would finally restart the dataDOG agent, and it would start calling in with the SQL metrics. So when you're actually logged in, all your servers start showing up like this under your hosts. And there on the far right, you can't really see it, but under apps, it lists what services are calling in. So in this particular example, it's JVM, it's showing MySQL, HA proxy. These are the servers that, the services that the dataDOG is now monitoring. Finally, when we get to start setting up the actual dashboard, we're going to create these widgets. They're totally customizable, which is really fun to do. So let's see here. This is, I'm setting up, I think this is the CPU one. So I'm just going to grab a graph here. I'm going to drop it on my empty screen board here. I want the CPU metric from my database. I'm going to name it. I'm going to either give it the global time, which is controlled up in the top right, or I can give it a specific time scale. That's what I'm trying to show you there. Again, this is the CPU measured in a different way other than a graph. And you could set up conditional formatting, so it'll change colors depending on what the thresholds you have set up. So what's really cool is my dashboard's mostly green, but if CPU spike, they all start turning red, and red means bad. So you can see how you can just really customize exactly how your screen board looks. You can resize all of these tools, move them around, select them, move them around in mass. I put a little title on the top. And that's just, how quickly you could set up your dashboard. And you can go crazy about how you want it to look. Again, I'm going to show you here how to create memory on that same dashboard. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to use the query value again, which is just going to give me a number. So this is used memory. So what I'm doing here is it actually lets me set up formulas with different pieces of data. So I'm dividing the used by the free to get a percentage. And I'm changing the value to actually change to percent as the custom units. And again, I could set up my thresholds as well. So I hope you can start to get an idea of how easy and quickly you could set this up, set up thresholds, and start seeing the kind of metrics on your server. And hopefully you don't need to leave the numbers that big. You can resize them and move them around. Unless you need to see them across the really big room, I guess. So finally, let's see. You can share your dashboards. This is a relatively new feature. I don't remember this being available when I first started using it. But again, you could share your dashboard with anyone. You can give it to colleagues. You can give it to JAMF support. You can set up teams even within dataDOG. So if other people create accounts, they could join your team and even edit the dashboards or create their own dashboards. If you have, like most ID departments, you have a kind of a command center with a bunch of TVs on a wall somewhere that looks like NASA or something. You could set up this on one of those TVs. So other people, if they notice that performance problems with the JAMP, they could come over and just look at the TV. They see a whole bunch of red boxes, they know something's up. And finally, this is a short link to my public dashboard if you want to see what it looks like. It's nothing too fancy, but it's just, I set up all my servers in columns, and it's a way that I can monitor how all my servers look. Yeah, that's pretty much what I have. Let's see. Yeah. Any questions? And I have Matt here. He's an engineer, like he said, at JAMF. And if you just have questions in general, not specifically to dataDOG or Zabbix or any other kind of monitoring solution, Matt is a good resource. Yeah. I think they have a mic they're going to bring to you.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, does dataDOG poll to get its data from those, and if so, how often does it do it, or does it use like SNMP?
I know you can customize the agent to tell it how often you want it to send data up to the cloud. By default, I don't know what the number is, but it's like every few seconds. So it's pretty often. It's really up-to-date data.
But the agent's deciding to send
Yes.
data, yeah.
Yeah, so it's pushing it up to the cloud.
And you may have answered this. I came in a little late. Work was calling me. But this is just managing the host itself, right? We're not actually doing any direct monitoring on the tomCAT app itself?
Yes, so that could be set up. And so with JMX, you can configure JMX, and then there's a config file on the server that dataDOG creates that you can configure in dataDOG and tell it how it's going to monitor JMX and send that data. So on my dashboard, I can go back here. Oops, too far. Oh, dang it. On my dashboard, I'm monitoring like the heap memory from tomCAT, which we could see when it does garbage collection. So one of the issues some people have is, I need to throw more memory at tomCAT. Well, you can actually see how often it does garbage collection, frees up memory, and we get that from the JMX data.
And one last thing. Any way to use dataDOG to aggregate any of those logs to maybe take a look and see if you're spiking a lot of errors in the log, et cetera?
There is. I don't use that. That's a paid feature. But yeah, you can have it look through logs, gather logs, and it does really cool stuff. If you look at their website, they have all that info. Thank you.
Do you need any specific ports open for this to work? Does your JAMP need to be internet accessible? Or if they're behind firewalls, does it still work?
It just needs to get out to the internet, which is required right now to use APNS or any other JAMP feature. So you don't have to customize anything, which is one of the reasons I went with it. So I didn't have to do anything special. I could just install the agent, set up my dashboard, and it's just working. I didn't have to bother networking or firewalls or any kind of custom configs.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bear with me here. This is really less of a dataDOG question and more monitoring in general. I have a pretty robust Elasticsearch infrastructure I've been using for a little under a year now. Is it possible to, either with Elasticsearch and maybe a Marvel Beats, replicate what dataDOG is looking for here? Is that something you guys have seen at all?
I'll give that one to Matt.
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar. We could maybe chat a little bit after the session here and get more info from you.
Roger that.
Just another little call out to the JMX data. There's actually some custom JMX, they call them MBeans, are what the data is in JMX, that that Jamf has implemented and are present in the server, in the Jamf Pro server, and that you could get with this monitoring. So beyond like the heap memory and things about Java or things about tomCAT, there's also some stats in there about the Jamf Pro server itself that you can gather, just some different counters and things like that. So once you kind of start poking around at the different pieces of available data, you might find that there's some really specific ones for the server too.
And I've once I had that JMX connector set up, there's another tool, Visual VM, that also allows you just to view.
You see kind of like the tree of all the values, yeah.
Yep. So it gives you a ton of data. Any other questions, just in general in monitoring, or any Jamf engineer questions? You got a valuable tool here.
Are you parsing the information from the health check at all as well? The question was in regards to, are you using the internal health check functionality too when monitoring?
Um,
I'm not familiar with internal health check. Do you know?
Yeah, there's just an endpoint on the server that gives back some information on what we perceive as a kind of a coarse guess on health. So if the server's starting up, you get kind of a message back on that. If it's up and healthy, that's good. If it's out of database connections and can't connect to the database, it'll give you that status back. So it'd be a separate thing, I think, kind of outside what a server agent would do. But yeah, that is an endpoint that's out there for anybody to monitor and kind of use for like node health checks in a kind of clustering load balancer situation, for sure.
Is that a URL?
Yeah.
Okay.
/health check, yep.
That's a great name for it. /health check.
Thank you. That's what I named it.
Yeah. Well done. Thanks.
Have you guys integrated this or seen this, and this might be more Jamf related, but have you guys integrated this with SCOM at all? I know several of us might be kind of more Microsoft heavy and might have SCOM instances, so just was curious if you have seen that or anything like that.
No, not familiar with that.
Cool.
Just curious, does the dataDOG have notification capabilities? Emailing out when it turns red?
Oh, yes. There is notification features. I don't have that currently turned on, but that is something that you could enable. You can set up thresholds and stuff like that.
Is that something you can get in like a phone app too? Do they have anything for that? Or?
I don't know.
Okay.
There might be some guys from dataDOG here who you can ask. There they are. They would be really great resources. I'll let him answer.
Well, yeah, you can send emails, right? But like PagerDuty is the most popular integration. You can send Slack messages, HipChat, like whatever you want. It's on the integrations page there.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. So he's referring to when you log in with your account on the left-hand side, there's an integrations button you can click, and it has all that info. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.